And infrastructure has always been the backbone for global growth. Building new as well as modernizing existing infrastructure is the necessary foundation for growth, but investment in infrastructure continues to lag far behind global needs, particularly in emerging markets. Benjamin Huang, who is President International at Standard Chartered and serves as co-chair of the B20 Finance and Infrastructure Task Force, joins us for a look into B20's stance on addressing the infrastructure funding gap. Ben, thanks so much for your time today. Now, before we get into the financing gap, maybe let's reflect on those recommendations from the B20 Finance and Infrastructure Workforce. They focus on longer-term solutions, improving flow of funds, expanding access to capital, and strengthening the pipeline of investable projects. How realistic is this in a G20 that's one would describe as fragmented?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. Obviously, the B20 is a composition of a lot of leaders from the business community. Okay, so the way we approach it is hopefully we come up with some practical solutions to recommend. So obviously, we believe these are doable, implementable, but it just requires all of us to join the dots a little bit. Right? So that's what the B20 has worked around a year to come up with these recommendations. These are being put forward to G20's consideration.
I ask because, right, the B20 in the function of the G20, right, is also working against this backdrop where the G20 is fragmented.
Well, the world is indeed fragmented, but it doesn't mean that we won't be able to work together to try to resolve some of these things, because some of these are real global challenges we're all facing, right? Against a fragmented world, all of us have a role to play, not just in the government side, it's also around MDBs, business communities, banks ourselves, which cover really 50-odd markets, and we do play a big part in Africa's development. We all believe in it.
Now, talking about banks and infrastructure needs when it comes to financing, we do still see a big financing gap, particularly here at home and Africa at large. Maybe just walk us through what is behind that shortfall and why has the world constantly underinvested despite the know-how and, you know, how we actually know that there is need for financing?
Yeah, I mean, look, as you commented earlier, infrastructure is the backbone of economic development, actually humanity's progress. And we are a big believer in getting the right infrastructure to the right locations. The reality is the last 100 years, we've seen a huge proliferation of population from 2 billion to 8 billion in the course of 100 years. Africa, even more speedily, from really 200 million now to 1.5 billion. Human evolution requires, or the population increase does require a lot of infrastructure, power, roads, rails, broadband, internet, you name it. So that's where it is. Unfortunately, where the population have grown the most is in the emerging markets, which on balance is less affordable to some of these development needs. And I do think there's also an element of perceived risks that funding going to these places, these markets carry a lot more risk, therefore demand a lot higher cost of capital, which makes a lot of these projects less doable, viable, right? So part of the B20 task force is trying to come up with recommendations to address some of these, whether these are perceived as real. It's not as if there aren't real risks involved, right? That don't forget about those real risks as well. But finding ways to fill the gap, to address some of the risks, and to find mitigants to make sure that we lower the cost of capital to make these projects more viable.
And how do we shift, I guess, investor sentiment when it comes to funding African infrastructure projects? What can government do, maybe even with the help of DFIs?
Yeah, the starting point, government should always have a proper roadmap, right, to define what are the core infrastructure needs. And sometimes a lot of governments are trying to boil the ocean and try to do too many things at one time. That isn't good. You always try to prioritize what are the most important ones. I'd always recommend focus initially around energy, power, and digital. right? These are the core elements before you do other things, right? Always have a roadmap, and also find help to do. Then there are these project preparation facilities which can help you structure these projects, frame it in a way that international investors understand the risks, how you go about structuring it, how you go about reducing some of these risks. Sometimes it's almost like teaching, I would say, students how to write a CV. You're also trying to train people to write proper proposals, hopefully in a structured manner, to make the international investors understand and participate in a broader fashion.
So what I'm getting here is that we need to, I guess, try and structure more harmonization so that we can get all stakeholders contributing to Africa's infrastructure story. Before I let you go, I want to talk about blended finance, right, which is frequently positioned as the key to scaling investment, yet volumes are downbeat. What needs to happen to unlock that in particular? Is it also around harmonization?
Yeah, a huge amount around harmonization. MDBs, DFIs all play a big part in contributing towards blended finance, but it's also to crowd in private capital, ranging from private credit, banks, investors, insurance companies. All these people have a role to play. And blended finance tries to use different structures to reduce the risk, and also to make sure that you risk strata them so that different players, different investors can play in different buckets of risk, so that it caters towards their risk appetite. I think the whole blended finance, the usage of guarantees, usage of longer term capital to address some of these longer term projects, right? These are very, very important. And it's a little bit about matchmaking as well, right? To make sure that the needs of African infrastructure is being properly portrayed to the investor world, so that we can crowd better multiple of private investment participation.
And infrastructure really at the heart of what's playing out here at home in South Africa. We just heard from the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, about how they are prioritizing infrastructure, which would be the backbone for growth, and I guess growth across the continent. Benjamin, thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.
That was Benjamin Hung, who is president of President International at Standard Chartered, and serves as co-chair of the B20 Finance and Infrastructure Task Force.